Hello and welcome to Riding in the Weeds. We are here with episode 84, and today we're talking about how our way of being dictates how we experience life, right? We're going to dig a little bit deeper into this, but what I want to say for our introduction is that we get stuck in the weeds because we have this familiar, and this is a Ginny quote, but a familiar bad feeling place, right? And when
Just
we
a
get
Laura Michelle quote, but
oh, there we go. But
whatever
it's
credit's due.
yeah. What is your familiar bad feeling place? And once you can identify that, you can start to actually change it, and that is the key. Because if your familiar bad feeling place is to wake up every morning feeling tired, like you don't want to do today, then that is literally how you're going to experience life. Whereas if you can identify that and start to be like, okay, well, how would I like to feel instead? And how do I change that? Then everything you're experiencing will change. And the beauty of this conversation is that it actually really ties us into why do we do this podcast and our whole kind of amalgamation, as it were, for the horses and the animal communication and the bike riding and the physical exercise, and why do we think that this is all important and where does our philosophy come from? So I am Natasha Lockie. I am a mountain bike coach who really is all about teaching life performance and being in a better state. I love this because it really does ground into how I feel about everything we do. You know, put a smile on your face when you're riding a bike and doing something difficult. It's going to be easier. And how do we bring that into our everyday life? And I am clearly here with my amazing co-host, Ginny. I'm going to let her introduce herself and then we're going to get into this conversation.
Yeah, I'm Jenny Brandon. I'm an animal communicator and energy healer for animals and their people too. And I am excited about this conversation because it really ties into a lot of the work that I do with the animals. So this is going to be a fun one.
All right, well, let's get started here. So, really, what we're talking about is that way of being. There's all of these practices that we are told to do that will make our life better. And Ginny sent me a message the other day, which really was quite interesting because it tied into a conversation that I've had with an upcoming interview that we're going to be posting with Barb Goodwin. And the whole concept of we do things in little silos, right? You go to the gym, you meditate, you have your good breakfast, you do these things that Instagram Reels tells you to do. But what we're not realizing is that nothing works in a silo. And so if you do your 5 minutes of meditation and then get off the mat and instantly go and have a horrible conversation with your partner, or you go to work and you spill coffee on yourself and you let that ruin your entire day, it's like you're missing the point, right? You go to the gym for an hour and then you literally don't move again for the rest of the day. Again, you're missing the point. And so all of these things that we're doing, they're not supposed to be done in a silo. They're supposed to be part of training ourselves. If you're eating well, it's training yourself to eat well all the time. It's not like I had a good breakfast, but then I'm going to eat chips and ice cream for the rest of the day. The idea is that we want to take whatever practice we are wanting to bring into our life and make it part of our way of being.
Yeah. And I love this so much because it's connecting a lot of dots. This is an excellent follow up from the last couple episodes where we were talking about the training yourself to be where you want to be and that has to be your focus. But this is a little bit different part of the conversation because we're really talking about connecting the dots across the activities. And that's the whole reason we started this podcast, right? Was we were having these conversations together where we realized that the biking and the animal work that I do and the physical fitness and everything was all so connected together. And the lessons and the values and everything were the same and they apply in everyday life.
Yeah.
And that really just drives the point home. Like, that's why we're doing what we're doing and why we're having the conversations we're having. Because if you get up off the mat and you leave it there, then you're missing out on a whole lot of benefits that
Yeah.
you could be getting out of the experience. Because the intention is to apply it to life and everyday moment to moment. I remember in the beginning when I was working on this type of thing with the horses, it had really hit me that when you're working with the horses, this applies to every pet, but because horses you generally have to go to be with, they're not in your home, thankfully, it applies in a little bit of a different way. So you arrive at the barn with the intention of going for a ride. So you go get your horse, you groom them, you tack up, go through the whole process, get on and ride, and then get off. For most people, the common thought process is the focus is on the ride. The ride is the important thing. The ride is what matters. The ride is where the progress is made. However, when I recognized that what was most important started when the horse saw my car pull in. Because I can guarantee you, if the horse can see where you park, they know what your car looks like. And that's the moment that the quote training begins, because that's the beginning of the interaction together in that relationship. And if you are not taking into account all of that time, I dare say for many people, the amount of time that you spend in preparation for the ride and then post ride taking care of things afterwards is longer than the ride. So what does that tell you about the importance of that time? Because if you're not factoring in the value of your way of being during that time as much as you're factoring it in during your ride, you're missing a huge opportunity. And the reality is, okay, if you ride your horse or if you're biking and you're only worried about that hour of your day, you have 23 other hours of the day
Well,
in which you have all of this time to be applying things.
so what's really interesting in everything that you're saying is that as you're talking, I'm like, that's literally every part of our life. When I'm getting up in the morning and I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to go and do my workout. And then I drag my sorry butt over to my workout room. And then I get started and I'm resisting it. That resistance never actually goes away because that is how I started my interaction. And if I was to change my state and move into a way of being like, okay, which I actually did this morning. I didn't really want to do my workout because I'm at that beginning of that cycle that I'm like, it's okay for me actually to not want to work out today. And in fact, it's not good for my body to do a hardcore workout. So I was lying in bed and I found a nice 20-minute yoga workout to do. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And then, but before I do that, I'll do some of my exercise, Tai Chi, things that are good for uplifting my mood. And I'm not going to do the 5 to 10 minutes of push-ups and burpees and all of those exercises. I'm just going to ignore those today. And the way I moved into the room and I really took in the view because it was incredible. And I then did some of my exercises and one of them I was doing and I was just like, oh my goodness, this is so hard today. And it's okay. I can't actually get myself from the floor to standing without using my hands. I normally can. I can't today. That's okay. And it was a completely different experience than when I'm in that resistance. It's like preparing dinner. When you start your preparing of dinner with an excitement around what you're going to eat and getting the ingredients out as opposed to what are we going to do? All you're focused on is that middle point, like as you say, right? All you're focused on is the ride. You're removing so many pieces of the experience when we can move through every experience from the beginning through to the end and think about how much better that food's going to taste when you've enjoyed the process of preparing it. And then the dinner doesn't finish when you're done eating. You then have to clean up but you don't have to. You get to clean up because that's part of the experience of having had the dinner. And I think everything that you've just said is so important to really feeling all of the pieces of the day, to feeling all of the pieces of being alive. And when we're in resistance in one area, we'll find that that resistance just constantly keeps coming up in every other area, and it makes everything so much harder. So if we don't want to be in resistance, how do we create a practice of movement throughout our entire day? How do we practice a sense of excitement for the bike ride we're going to go on, or the time with our horse, or the time with our dog? And so instead of getting home and being like, ugh, I got to walk the dog, I'm so tired, if we can start the day with that excitement that when I come home, there's going to be this beautiful, fluffy creature that wants to spend time with me. Now, that experience and that joy actually starts at the beginning of our day, is now intermingled throughout our entire experience.
Yeah. And that's really what it boils down to. And these are the two biggest themes, I think, of our podcast is the awareness, the presence, and focus.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have those two pieces of the puzzle in place, that allows you to move intentionally through your day and through any experience that arises fluidly and in that flow state that they talk about. And that is the ultimate goal. It takes remembering a million times, 10 million times probably, honestly, at this point. I think I'm probably halfway there, in all of my years of working on these things. But it just takes repeating it and continually redirecting your focus back to where you want it to be. It's no different than training your dog or training your horse or working with your child. It's training you.
Yeah.
And that is what makes the difference in how we experience the world. But it really is a choice. And when we go through our day completely preoccupied with the spinning brain and the monkey mind going crazy and not actually stopping to take that choice and make that choice consciously, then we just roll through life. And then when we try and do the exercise in the afternoon, we go to the gym or we work the horse or we walk the dog, we find that those things don't have as much of an impact as they could if we were working on that presence throughout the day rather than just that little silo sliver of time in the middle.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's really important there is the thought of it being a cue, right? So, in order to train a dog, we have cues that we use to train the dog. When you're working with your horse, you have cues that you use that tells the horse what you want. It doesn't matter what we're doing. When you're doing a yoga practice, the yoga instructor gives you cues to let you know what to do next and how to be in that posture or that form. So I'm listening to this thing this morning with my husband, and one of the things I came up with so many years ago, I was riding my bike and it was my birthday and I'm going for this beautiful bike ride and it was hard and I'm going up this hill and it's hot and it's sticky and I'm like, oh, like this sucks. Getting up this hill sucks. And I thought to myself, what if I just put a smile on my face and keep it there? And so I did. And it transformed everything. And I later on heard a whole lot of research around this concept that just by putting a smile on your face, just by changing your state that you're in, you can change everything physiologically about what's going on for you. And the smile is just something that will light us up. And so when we find cues that work for us, then we can start to implant them into our day. And maybe the cue that helps you smile is thinking of things that you love, right? So maybe that's thinking of your dog or whatever it is. But if you can find those ways to cue those experiences for you, then you can keep coming back to that and you can keep changing that state, because we're being given cues subconsciously the whole time, which we're allowing to change the state. And then that puts us into a state that we don't want to be in. And we're like, I don't know how to change this. Well, honestly, think of something you love. Think of something that feels good to you and allow yourself to be in that experience and in that feeling. Everybody keeps telling us you want to experience something, you want to experience being wealthy. Well, what the hell is it that wealthy feels like to you? You don't need to be wealthy to feel that feeling right now. You don't need to be meditating and sitting on a mat and breathing in and out slowly to feel peace and feel calm and feel relaxed. You can do that in any moment, in any day, in any situation if you choose to.
I love what you're saying about this, though, because again, this goes back to the choice point, right? We have a choice. And if you find yourself struggling, you find yourself in your familiar bad feeling place again, you need to stop and back up and figure out what cues are you giving yourself, what cues are available, and where do you have choice that you could choose something different.
Yeah.
And what happens in our familiar bad feeling place that Laura Michelle Wolf talks about so much is that it becomes our default, right? It becomes like where the thermostat is set.
Yeah.
And that's where our body has decided everything is copacetic and that's what's normal and we like it there. Normal doesn't mean that it's, quote, good or bad necessarily. And our body can get things really mixed up sometimes, assigning a meaning with what is comfortable and familiar as being, quote, good. And so we have to back up and find those cues and find those things that are going to help us change our state to make sure that we are training ourselves to be in a different place, in a different way of being more often.
Yeah.
That might mean deciding that you don't doom scroll anymore. You take the apps off your phone, or you put a timer on that limits you to only being able to use certain apps for a certain amount of time every day.
Yeah.
That might be 10 minutes. Whatever it is, though, that you can create that's going to help create a positive response. I like to listen to podcasts in the car. Laura Michelle Wolf's is one of my favorites because it puts me in a better frame of being and reminds me about the energy and presence that I have in my vehicle on the road. I don't know about where you live, but where I live, drivers suck. Traffic is horrible here. People do not drive very well. It is hard to maintain that positive space while driving around other people. It's stressful to be in traffic, no doubt, but we also have a choice. So can you put something on to listen to that's going to make you feel good? That can just be music. That doesn't even have to be a podcast. I like to listen to podcasts because I also feel like I learned something and I get to practice some techniques and I get to explore different feelings and explore being in that frame of presence while in a place that is somewhat challenging. And so I get to put that into practice immediately. So what can you do that's going to either create the cue for you or remove a choice point out of your life that you know does not serve you well? Because when we know that, sometimes we have to make it hard for us to make that choice. And that's the only way we can sometimes overcome that hurdle. It's like not keeping the snacks in the house. If you know you don't have good control over moderating your snacks, don't have snacks in the house. Or buy the single serve bags if that's what it takes. You have to figure out whatever it's going to take to get you to where you want to be. But it is a choice.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like Jenny's having issues with her power right now on her headphones. And, you know, she was just saying that she plugged in her headphones and then didn't turn the on button on. And it just made me think it's so funny that we're talking about this. And then you said that because I'm like, that's exactly it. Where's your on button? What's your on button? Not somebody else's on button. Don't let the rest of the world dictate. And you talk about scrolling. It's like the on button for scrolling is that they keep feeding you stuff that will keep you scrolling. They do not care about you. Just because they keep showing you exercises or ways to lose weight or 500 different people who are trying to help you with perimenopause and your hormones, you do it this way, this. That's not because they're like, oh, look, this person needs help. Let's give them lots of help. They're like, no, let's get this person so lost in the algorithm that instead of them making any positive change in their lives, they're just going to keep scrolling. And it doesn't matter. You're trying to plant seedlings, you will get 500 different ways to do it. You're trying to help your dog stop barking at things. You want to learn how to feed your dog raw food. There will be 5,000 different ways to the point where you are so stuck. So what you need to do is find the on button. Take one of those. It's like I read something, I can't remember where it was from, but the thing that stuck with me was every diet will work. You write every single diet on a board and you take a dart and you throw that dart at the wall and you do that thing for a period of time, you will get results. The reason why we don't get results from the things that we do is because we do not focus on them. We don't make them a part of our life. And the real motivation is interesting. So we jumped on this call and I was like, I want to talk about changing state and the smile, because the smile has been such a huge thing for me. I've taught that to so many mountain bikers. When you are in a situation and you are trying to think, oh, okay, what did Tash say about balance? How did she say that I could get through this corner? And your brain is going a million miles an hour. Forget everything and smile. And that is my biggest, best piece of mountain biking advice that I will ever give to anybody. It's worth thousands of dollars. Just stop focusing on all of the things. Put a smile on your face, and I guarantee you that your algorithm, your computer system, it's like the MS-DOS prompt for anyone who knows what I'm talking about, that will allow everything to run, right? Because as soon as you take the focus away from all of the things that you could or should or whatever, and you concentrate on that smile, it allows your higher brain, your intelligence to run. And then Jenny said, well, I sent you those quotes from the mindfulness redesign book. And basically the key is that we want to look at meditation as a way of life. And as we talked about that, we were like, oh, we're talking about the same thing. And what's even more beautiful is that we're not just talking about the same thing, but we're actually leading into the conversation that I had with Barb that we're going to have next week, which is the interview about movement and how we want movement to be part of our everyday practice. And that mindfulness is not something that happens in a silo. Mindfulness is how we move through everything. And I can't remember the quote that Barb gave. So next week, you're going to have to listen to our podcast because it was really, really good. And it really summed this up really beautifully. But I'm just looking at this mindfulness redesigned. And the purpose of your formal meditation practice is to prepare us for the informal practice, which is how we experience each of our waking moments. And this doesn't just apply to meditation. This applies to everything that makes you feel good. The purpose of doing anything that lights you up and makes you feel good and alive is so that you can take that experience and you can apply it to every single part of your life. Because if you can find a way to feel lit up and passionate and alive somewhere in your life, you can turn on that power switch and you can take that feeling into other places. You want to feel good in the moment? You go back to that moment when you're flying down the mountain on your mountain bike and everything is flowing and everything feels good. That, you package it up, put it in a bottle, and you freaking shoot it back when you're in a bad place. You go into that moment and you can change your state. You can change your being by transplanting it from one thing to the other. Now we know what it feels like. So if you've never felt joy before, how do you know what it feels like? But we've all had that experience at some point or another in our lives. If you want to feel what unconditional love is, go and find an animal and sit down and pet the animal. You will feel that peace, that calm, that love.
Yeah. Yeah. It just becomes a way of being.
Yeah. And I think what's really important is that we are aware and we are mindful of what we want to bring into our everyday existence. And we are mindful of what we don't. So we take out the garbage. We don't let the garbage sit. And until you recognize that you're there again and go, oh, that's my cue. What does it feel like to be on my bike when I'm having a really good day? What does it feel like to be with my pet when I'm having a really good day? This has been awesome. I absolutely love hanging out with you, Jenny. I hope that anyone listening to this also has enjoyed it. I really would love it if you know somebody who would benefit from this. Please share this podcast with them. And if you could just take a moment and do us a huge, huge favor, can you hit the heart button? Or if you don't want to hit the heart button, leave us a comment and tell us why, or just some little bit of feedback. We would really, really appreciate it. It really helps us and just enables us to keep moving forward, because we all love to be acknowledged and appreciated. And just if this has helped, please share it with somebody. And yeah, hit that little heart button, hit the subscribe bell if you're in YouTube. If you're in Apple, leave us a review, Spotify. We would really, really appreciate it. I'm Natasha Lockie. I am a mountain bike life performance coach. You can find me on Betty Gohard on Instagram. You can find me Natasha Lockie on Facebook, and I am also on Substack. Not as much as Jenny would like me to be, Natasha Lockie. And you can find the podcast at Riding in the Weeds. So ridingintheweeds.com will get you to our Substack, and you can also find us on Spotify and Apple as well. What about you, Jenny?
Yeah, I'm Jenny Brandon. I'm an animal communicator and energy healer for animals and their people too. If you are having behavior challenges or relationship challenges with your pet, emotional issues, or you've got some big life experiences happening and just want to check in with your pet about what's going on and make sure that everybody's on the same page, that's a great time to book a session. You can find me on the web at soulpetconnections.com and on Substack, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube under the same handles. So again, to echo Tosh, we appreciate you being in here and hanging out with us in the weeds, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, everyone.